authority they have over any children they may already have. So being stripped of one nationality doesn't necessarily mean that you get another nationality automatically. And some countries restrict the ability of a woman who's lost her nationality of origin through marriage to regain it when that marriage is terminated, either through death or divorce. And what then does she do, for example, in a situation of abuse? Perhaps she no longer has the right to reside in her new country, but her children have the nationality of her abusive husband. What options does she have to protect herself and her children? On the other hand, these laws are silent on the impact of the nationality on similarly situated husbands, implying that men can continue to enjoy their nationality on divorce, death, or remarriage with no consequences. So our question is, why should it affect women in that way? Why can't the law also provide equally for women? If there's a particular issue that governments are trying to address, why is the issue not valid for men as well as for women? So building on the stereotype of a woman belonging to her husband is that of a child belonging to the father rather than a mother. So a father's nationality, therefore, is more likely to attach to the children, even if they live in the mother's home country. So if you take the case of Hyun and her foreign husband, married for over 25 years, who had 3 daughters. They lived in her country, which they considered their home, but because she could not pass her nationality to her daughters, the family had to suffer significant hardship and deprivation. They weren't eligible for health insurance, making it difficult for them to cover medical expenses, particularly for their middle daughter who needed surgery. Considered foreigners in their own country where they were born, the girls could not claim social benefits either, which would otherwise have helped them cover special school fees for their youngest, who is dyslexic. Since Hyun was not able to pass her nationality to her husband, he couldn't freely work, so he had to be sponsored. She had to get relatives to facilitate him getting a job in the country. It's difficult to obtain. It cost him over $1,100 a year, and it also meant that he was tied to that employer, making him very vulnerable in that position. As a result, she had to go and get a job and become the main provider for the family, but her job didn't confer the medical benefits that they needed that other dependents would have got had she been able to pass on her nationality to them. Consequently, the family had to get donations to help support particularly the needs of the children. And without the local nationality, her daughters, once they left school, faced difficulties in staying in the country, which is the only home they've known. They're not eligible for government jobs, they can't access free higher education. For their eldest daughter, because she had few life prospects, this meant she was married off at the age of 15 to a relative in a foreign country, and she went to live away from the only family and friends she'd ever known to the country of her father's nationality. And her younger sisters will also be vulnerable to that same fate of child marriage as they get a little bit older. Another stereotype that prevails when the couple is not married is that mothers will raise any children and fathers are entitled to and can remain irresponsible. I raise this because there was a very interesting dissenting opinion by Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg in the US Supreme Court on the issue. In the US, you can only, if a child is born out of wedlock and abroad, it can only claim US nationality if it meets a long list of criteria, including if the father acknowledges the child and agrees to provide financial support for it up to the age of 18. So Justice Ginsburg wrote a very interesting dissenting opinion, really looking at the issues of the case and why the law was phrased this way. It could have been phrased a different way if there's an issue you want to address. So she said the law at issue might have made custody or support the relative criterion. Instead, it treats mothers one way and fathers another, shaping government policy to fit and reinforce the stereotype or historic pattern. One can demur on the government's observation that more United States citizenships mothers of children born abroad out of wedlock actually raise their children than do US citizen fathers of such children. But this observation does not justify distinctions between male and female US citizens who take responsibility or avoid responsibility for raising their children. We understand when this law was first raised, it was also focused on US military going abroad and not wanting to take responsibility for the children born of any unions from that issue. Equality Now with others has submitted an amicus brief in a new US Supreme Court case, which is currently pending, filed at the end of last year, with the support of past UAA President Steve Hammond and his firm Hughes Hubbard, which we're very grateful for. And that we think will be coming up in the next months. This then is a snapshot of the situation in times of peace. So family insecurity, lack of opportunity, lack of access to basic services and facilities, vulnerable to abuse by employers, law enforcement, and others. Move that situation to one of conflict when families are often displaced to other countries and vulnerabilities of the families concerned become even greater. And I'm grateful to Refugees International for the following case study from 2015. A pregnant Syrian woman arrived in Turkey with a 1-year-old child and no documentation. She was married to a Syrian doctor. Mother and child had fled the unbearable bombardment of their hometown Aleppo, while he remained in Syria to work in an underground field hospital. He had defected from the Syrian military in 2012 and was officially declared dead the same year. Because he no longer legally existed, he was unable to register his 2013 marriage or the birth of his first child in Aleppo. When his second child was born in Turkey in 2015, shortly after his wife's arrival, she could not file an application for the baby's birth certificate because he, the father, remained in Syria, and she had no legal proof of her marriage or her husband's birth certificate. Of course, when families move quickly to avoid danger, they don't necessarily take all their documentation with them. When a country is in conflict, there might not be easy access to replacement documentation from overseas embassies or proof that it ever existed. But even without the awful effects of the conflict, Syrian law discriminates against women. Syrian women cannot confer their nationality to their children, to those children born outside the country. The new baby is therefore stateless because the child has no father there with documentation to prove his filiation. If the child, such as the first child in this example, was born inside the country, Syrian women can only confer citizenship if the father is unknown or stateless. Is a non-person, as this doctor became, is he unknown? In any case, the law does not account for situations where the father is known but deceased or missing, or when he is known and holds citizenship of Syria or another country, but refuses to go through the steps required to confer his nationality on the child. The truth is, the exception for the mother to pass on citizenship is rarely accessible in practice. She just can't do it, whatever the circumstances, rendering many children stateless. Just for interest, the law states that anyone born inside or outside the country to a Syrian Arab father shall be considered as Syrian Arab ipso facto. So automatically the child gets citizenship through the father. An estimated 11 million Syrians have fled their homes since the outbreak of the civil war, becoming internally displaced persons or refugees in neighboring countries. According to UNHCR, tens of thousands of displaced children in Jordan and Lebanon are growing up without their fathers. As of 30 September 2013, there were nearly 42,000 female-headed households in Jordan and over 36,000 in Lebanon. Not only are fathers absent, many children have no idea where they are. These children, especially those born outside of Syria, risk being left with no Syrian nationality. Indeed, the UN has stated that 30,000 Syrian babies in Lebanon and 60,000 babies in Turkey are at risk of statelessness. What does that mean in practice for these children? If certain countries are allowing special refugee status to Syrians, for example, would they take the children of Syrian women if those children cannot prove they are Syrian nationals? As and when it might be safe for them to return to Syria, will they have problems doing so because they cannot prove they are Syrian? If they stay for an extended period in a host country, will they have access to education and employment? If not, they could, through desperation, seek opportunities elsewhere, including risking their lives to cross the sea. They could be vulnerable to traffickers. Reports of sexual abuse, particularly of girls but also of boys, is rife in the refugee camps, especially those in Europe, where children might be unaccompanied. An increase in child marriage has been reported, with families trying to provide food for their families and perhaps a wished-for secure future for their girls. But girls are being particularly damaged by this practice, often married off to unknown and much older men for a lifetime of sexual and possibly other abuse. We've also received some anecdotal information that some girls are sold into temporary marriage and then quickly trafficked into prostitution. Even if you stay in the host country and find a way of scraping a living, what are your prospects without a nationality? You won't be able to move country. You probably won't be able to buy property or get a driving license. Accessing employment might only be possible in exploitative and potentially unsafe situations. Those of us who have a national identity take so many things for granted. We probably cannot even imagine all the benefits we would not be able to access without a nationality of some sort. The current situation in Syria is grim. It is made grimmer because of Syrian sex discriminatory nationality law. I could have probably talked about a whole range of different laws that have the same effect, coming back to the issue of going to the top of the river and looking at how development, equality, and rule of law are really crucial to prevent conflict in the first place. All the problems of being displaced would not go away if discrimination is removed from the law, that's true, but it will increase the options of children and families for a better future. Similar laws that exist in Egypt exist in several other countries, all this despite international commitments made by all these governments through UN international instruments and others. With the advent of the Sustainable Development Goals, which were also talked about this morning, which is a plan for action for people, planet, and prosperity, we have an opportunity to redouble our efforts to amend all discrimination in the law. There is indirectly and directly, we could probably argue that actually a lot of the goals, again, are tied into nationality. We've already talked about violence, we've talked about harmful practices, we've talked about access to jobs and participation in society, and all those are fundamentally predicated on whether you can get a nationality or not. I believe that creative legal minds can help forge solutions to these problems. The most straightforward is revocation of sex discriminatory laws. Equality Now has petitions you can sign in this regard for those who would like to take action, but I hope that you in your own countries can also advocate for change, as well as supporting others who are doing so. Some countries have adopted interim measures to alleviate some of the worst impact of the laws rather than change the law themselves. We as lawyers could make it our business to understand such impact and support ways to mitigate its harmful effect. We can litigate strategically, challenging such laws in breach of perhaps constitutional protections of equality. And we can speak openly to our other colleagues to raise these issues. Our colleague from ICRC today talked about using our own voice and using our own knowledge and our own privilege. I was just talking earlier to Mr. Ganguly from the Indian Supreme Court, who was telling me about how legal aid, how he was instrumental actually in starting up a legal aid program there in India. It just starts with one idea, with talking to colleagues, and we can do an incredible amount. We at Equality Now have huge faith in good law to make the world a better place. We thank you for your contribution and would welcome further collaboration. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup pour votre présentation. C'est extraordinaire de découvrir par les quelques mots que vous avez dit en 15 minutes la chance que l'on a d'avoir une nationalité et la stupidité que l'on a de ne pas s'en rendre compte. Parce qu'on n'est jamais confronté à ces situations et qu'on a la chance de vivre dans un monde en paix depuis pas mal de temps. Et c'est quelque chose d'assez extraordinaire. Je pense qu'il faudrait effectivement qu'on se le rappelle très souvent. Et s'agissant de l'égalité, il y a quand même une chose qui, moi, me choque énormément, c'est qu'une femme ne puisse pas donner sa nationalité à son enfant alors que c'est elle qui l'a fait. Et ça, il faudrait que l'on fasse des campagnes immenses et mondiales pour qu'on change les lois, que les femmes puissent transmettre leur nationalité à leurs enfants. Ça serait un grand pas en avant. Je vous remercie.